Hello, how you doing? My name is Chris Matthews. I'm your relationship coach and licensed marriage and family therapist. And in this video, it's going to be a part 2, and I'm going to discuss with you guys the 4 losses that come with alcohol use and drug abuse. And I'm also going to provide you guys with 5 different resources that are used to help people, couples, and families gain the support they need to heal and treat substance use disorders. The goal of the video is to help you out if you're in a relationship or if it's just you watching, to understand the cost that can come with abusing alcohol and substances. Not using, but abusing. If you are a social consumer of substances and you don't have any issues, I'm not attempting to make a problem where there is no problem. However, in our prior video, we talked about the 11 signs and symptoms that can present themselves in people who do have problems. So we're going to segue into the 4 losses. Everything has a cost to it. So when you consume substances, there is a cost that something unfortunate can happen. The first cost or loss is the loss of control. So what's that look like? Well, first and foremost, let's break it down. When you consume alcohol or an impairing substance, it's altering your brain chemistry for that moment. It's changing how you think and how you see things. I like to use the analogy of like sunglasses. If you have a pair of clear sunglasses on, you're able to see the world through the lens of your natural viewpoint. If you change that tint, if you put red sunglasses on, everything is going to be red. If you put blue sunglasses on, everything's going to be blue. So think of alcohol and substance using mind states as that tint. So if you consume alcohol or substances in a higher amount, you're now going to see life through the lens of the substance use in that moment. So that can look like losing control, and control isn't something that is just about willpower. A lot of times people look at alcohol and go, okay, I don't have a problem because I can control it. Well, what's control? Control is really in the choice to drink or not drink. The reason why I'm talking about control is because I have a lot of clients come in and say, Chris, I don't want to stop drinking because if I stop drinking, that's proof that I have a problem because I couldn't control it. Some aspects of alcohol use aren't even within your control. For example, the genetic precomposition. You may be predisposed to an alcohol use disorder based on your ancestry or your history, your family history. That has nothing to do with you in terms of what you can and can't control. And I break that down for you because if you have uncles, grandparents, parents, family members that had alcohol use disorders or abusing behaviors, then that's part of your genetic makeup. So it doesn't mean you're a bad person because you have a family history. Think of it like, I want to say it's Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, I believe, is a gluten deficiency, if I'm not mistaken. And if your body's unable to break down gluten, or even having an ability where your body can't break down lactate or milk. So you're not bad because your body can't process something the same way as someone else's body. That doesn't make you bad if your brain doesn't function the same way someone else's brain functions when they consume alcohol. So the loss of control comes by the decision you make to drink or not drink. A lot of clients who I counsel that are aware of their family history choose not to play that card of consuming because they don't want to take the risk. They know that their family history includes people who are dependent on substances, so they say, you know what, I'm not even going to get on that train because I don't know where the stop's going to be. The stop might be you drink a little bit, you're okay. But what if that stop is a treatment center? What if that stop is along the lines of actually having a problem? So once again, loss of control isn't about willpower. It's about making the decision while you're sober. As I assess clients in my practice for DWIs or court mandated offenses, the decision to drink or to drive and drink happened well before they started drinking. The decision was made when you left the home and you knew you were consuming alcohol and you didn't have a plan. The plan has to be made when you're sober, not after you already started drinking. But it's hard to make a rational plan when you've already started to see things through the lens of alcohol. So control is about the decision to not drink or to drink, not if you have a problem or not have a problem, because at the end of the day, it could be a hereditary or biological factor. So the second loss that can come when evaluating if a client or a couple or person has an issue with substance using behaviors is going to be a loss of trust. The loss of trust can be a slippery slope. If you're dating a partner or you're married and you know that your partner gives you a side eye when you consume alcohol, then naturally you may decide to protect them by just not telling them you consume. But they can smell substances on you. So I've had clients that would consume beer or alcohol prior to coming home, and their partner would ask or give them that side eye, and they would deny consuming because they didn't want to engage in a fight or argument. But what happened was that they were eroding the trust within the relationship by just saying no, because your partner then begins to question, what else are you doing? And the user of substances might think that it's a small little lie, and little lies turn into big problems. So the loss of trust tends to be a side effect when a person has an issue with substances. If you got to hide a behavior from your partner, deep down inside, you probably know that it isn't something you need to be doing anyway. So loss of trust is going to be that second factor or loss that I see in couples and in individuals. The third loss of identity. So what does that mean? Loss of identity. If you find yourself desiring or needing to engage in the use of alcohol or drugs just to feel normal or like yourself, then you've now wrapped up your identity in substances. Big example. Right now, the cannabis industry is booming. You're hearing a lot of reports of states legalizing recreational marijuana. And because marijuana comes from a plant, people think that it's not a drug. It's still a drug. Most medications that aren't synthetic and vitamins and minerals, they come from plants, right? So it's still a drug. Now, I'm not here to debate marijuana being good or bad. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the fact that if you have to use marijuana or any substance for that matter to regulate your behavior, then at that point you want to ask yourself, am I using medications that have been researched? Am I using medications that are being regulated and properly managed under a healthcare provider? If you're self-medicating in order to feel normal, then at that point that may be irresponsible. So I'm not against medications, I'm not against drugs. I'm against using substances without having the proper regulation. I've had clients come in and they can't eat without smoking marijuana first. They can't calm themselves down when life throws a curveball at them without smoking. They can't go to sleep without smoking. So at some point, as I shared earlier, the substance becomes the person's partner. So when you're in a relationship, that can be an issue because you can cheat on your partner with a substance. You know, one of the nicknames for marijuana is Mary Jane. And Mary Jane can actually be a figure or an item in that relationship. When your wife or boyfriend makes you mad, you turn to Mary Jane. When you had a stressful day at work, you go to Mary Jane. And that is now a relationship you develop with the drug. So identity looks like ensuring you know who you are without the substance. And then 2, if you need substances to regulate mental health or what have you, you're getting the regulation done. And why is that important? Your body chemistry is changing. So regulation means the substance may need to increase or decrease based on how your chemical compositions are changing within your mind and your body. That's why when you are prescribed medication for mental health by usually a psychiatrist, you have follow-up visits. The follow-up visits are designed to determine if the medication is still doing its job. Do you need more of it or less of it? So the same way you have to maintenance your vehicle, you have to maintenance your body's chemistry as well. So that's why I'm not against substance use. I'm against non-regulated substance use, because at that point, you're now going into a situation blindly. If you purchase marijuana off the street, or any substance for that matter off the street, you don't know what you're getting unless you have a chemistry lab handy. You don't know what you're getting. Fentanyl, is a very lethal substance in high quantities, and drug sellers don't care about your well-being. They care about money and profit. So the person selling you the drugs on the street doesn't care about if you're going to harm yourself. Now, in a way they do, because they want the residual business. But a lot of these overdoses you might hear in the news or in your community may not be a person who knew what they were taking or what you're ingesting. Right? Marijuana on the streets usually sold in some plastic container or whatnot. It doesn't have an ingredients list on it. It doesn't have a number to call if something's wrong. You don't know what you're ingesting. So that's why it's so critical to look at what you're putting in your body, and it be regulated with the standard of follow-up. So that's very important when it comes to loss of identity. The 4th loss, and I talked about this earlier in other videos as well, the loss of safety. So what do I mean by that? If your substance using behaviors put you in a position where you're now violent, physically or verbally aggressive, or irritable, and that could be using the substance or withdrawing from the substance, at that point you're creating an unsafe environment. With alcohol and other substances, you can black out. A blackout is something that happens when you're conscious, but when you reflect back on that moment in time, you don't remember what you were doing or saying. That's unsafe, because if you put yourself in a position where you don't remember what's going on, someone could take advantage of your body, someone could take advantage of your mind, or what have you in that moment, because you won't remember. So, I'm a girl dad. I have 3 children and I have a daughter as well, and then 2 boys. That's probably one of my biggest fears. Having my daughter go off to college, or, go out in the world, and she's, experimenting with alcohol, or someone puts something in her drink, and then she doesn't have control over her mind or body, and someone takes advantage of her. And I'm just so big on educating the public, and that's why I'm doing these videos, because I don't want a person to be in a position or a situation they could have prevented. Using substances is something you can prevent. And if you're going to use them, we hear all the commercials say, drink responsibly. But no one tells you what the responsible consumption looks like. Responsible consumption looks like being in a setting, and it's also based on the amounts and frequency. So setting, amounts, frequency. Also, why do we have age limits on alcohol in the United States, for that matter, 21 or older? That's based off of your brain development. The frontal cortex frontal lobe in your brain doesn't truly finish developing to about 25. So the longer you can withhold or withstand from consuming substances, the less risk you run of impacting your natural brain growth and development. I would like to see that number higher, but unfortunately, we're in a capitalistic society, so the alcohol companies, the tobacco companies, they're trying to make money. Like, the government isn't responsible for your health. You're responsible for your health. The government's not responsible for your safety. You're responsible for your safety. So making the decision to consume substances in an unsafe environment, large quantities and high frequencies, is your decision. No one's supposed to make that decision for you. And I bring this up because as a DWI provider that works with mandated clientele, they get frustrated like, well, why is alcohol offered everywhere? Well, we're in America. It's a free country. So be responsible with the freedoms you have. That's very important when we look at loss of safety. In the next portion of this video, I'm going to segue into talking about the 5 different ways you can gain help if you or someone you know or your partner has been identified as having an issue with alcohol or substance use. The first and most common line of help are support groups. Support groups typically are going to consist of what we call Narcotics Anonymous, NA, or Alcoholic Anonymous. A lot of people are familiar with the support groups. What makes support groups a great first step is, one, you're in an environment with other people who are also battling addiction or may experience the same things you're going through. So you have that community support of people that aren't going to judge you because they're in the same position you in or have been in that position. Next, they're usually free. Also, last but not least, the accessibility. When I was in grad school, I was taking an addictions course and I had to do an assignment where I had to visit a NA group. I was in Atlanta. My wife and I were at a Jay-Z Beyonce concert that weekend, and I told my wife, hold on, I got to go find a NA group. So I found an NA group online, went to the group. It was an open group, and then I was able to write my paper assignment on the group. So no matter where you are in the country, usually you can find an NA or AA group. The next level of defense or treatment, education and early intervention programs. So in our state of North Carolina, if you are charged with a DWI and you're convicted, you're mandated to complete an assessment. The assessment then entails what level of care. The first level of care on the ASAM criteria, ASAM is the acronym for a model that substance abuse counselors use to determine levels of care in terms of treatment. So it's like a step ladder of, low to high. So the lowest level of treatment is education early intervention programs. And in North Carolina with a DWI, if your BAC is under 0.15, your first offense, and you haven't been diagnosed with a disorder, you're mandated to do a minimum of a 16-hour education program. Education is a great first step because a lot of times people don't know what they don't know. So in this education program, you're taught about BAC, blood alcohol content. You're taught about things around frequency, healthy alcohol amounts, unhealthy alcohol amounts, how alcohol impacts your family, your friends, your environment. So gaining that education for a lot of people is enough. They get the knowledge and then they apply it. When that doesn't work, we go up the step ladder to outpatient counseling. Now, outpatient counseling is typically rendered in an hour amount. So when we do an assessment, we'll say you have to do X amount of hours of outpatient substance abuse counseling. Outpatient substance abuse counseling is broken up in 3 steps. You have short term. Short term is 20 hours to 39 hours of outpatient care. These services are usually offered in a group format. Long term, 40 to 89 hours of outpatient care. Then you have intensive outpatient care, which is 90 or more hours of outpatient care. So outpatient care is a step higher than education because you're learning about substances, but you're also processing your own behaviors, processing family of origin, processing attitudes. So you're going a little bit deeper in outpatient care. The next level on the stair step is going to be detoxification in inpatient treatment centers. In a prior video, I talked about withdrawal. So if you have been consuming large amounts of alcohol or substances and you stop consuming those substances abruptly, your body's going to have to readjust. Through that readjustment process, you might experience things that could be lethal, like seizures or increased heart rates. So the detoxification center is designed to help you safely rid your body of the substances. Once that's done, most detox centers are going to then align you with another level of care as you discharge. That could be an inpatient facility, or it could be a drop down to outpatient. Usually it's some form of inpatient facility, because if you need detox, you already have had a lot of the signs and symptoms met that indicate that a new environment for a substantial amount of time is going to help re-alter your attitude and just get you out of the space that made it susceptible to consume alcohol or drugs regularly. Inpatient facilities have large ranges, typically based on what your insurance is going to pay for. Usually you'll hear a client say a 28-day program. You have longer term care programs that are encompassing of the inpatient, detox, inpatient, partial hospitalization, outpatient, individual counseling. It steps down. So think of these treatments as ladders. Last but not least, number 5 is going to be medication-assisted treatment, MAT programs. Medication-assisted treatment varies. A lot of clients, a lot of people in the public are familiar with methadone and Suboxone clinics. Methadone and Suboxone are used for pain regulation, but they're also used for clients that are withdrawing from opioids and they don't want to encounter the withdrawals that come by way of not consuming opioids after having a history of consumption. So those centers are great for people who have a higher relapse potential because of the stress and strain on their bodies that come with detoxifying. Medication-assisted treatments also include substances you can take to block your cravings and desires to want to use alcohol and substances. So I'm a firm believer that you want to find the right tool for the right job. So the assessment is an ongoing process that helps you align with the tool. So I think about analogies pertaining to a golfer. When you play golf, you might have a bag of clubs. Your goal is to use the club based on where the ball lands. If you're starting out, you're usually going to use the driver. That driver is designed to push the ball as far as possible. When you're close to the hole, you may want to use the putter. So these levels of care are similar. If you have a client that is near the cup, meaning they don't have a lot of issues and they just need some education, you just might use support groups and early intervention. If you have a client that is needing to work on their substance using behaviors, but they're functional, they're working every day, they're with the family, they don't have any symptoms that would be lethal if they withdraw, outpatient might work. If you have that severe client who needs to be eradicated from their environment, they are in fear that if they stop drinking, it could be lethal, detoxification, inpatient. If you have that client that's done these services and they just can't kick the habit and they're needing some medication assistance, MAT programs. So you can use these as standalones or in combination, but you want to be properly evaluated and assessed. So I'm at the end of the video. We talked about the 4 losses that can come with substance use and behaviors. We also talked about the 5 different basic stair steps of treatment. Subscribe to our channel. Once again, we have a lot of materials on our website, relationshipcounselingtools.com. And if you Google information, make sure it's an accredited source. If it's bobs.com website, they're going to just tell you whatever. Make sure you look at the sources of your information. That's very critical when talking about drugs and substances. My name is Chris Matthews. I'm your relationship coach and licensed marriage and family therapist. and I look forward to seeing you on the other side.
You can never go back. I gotta take it all.